when we're saying walking by faith, there's that expression trusting the process. And there's so many situations that you can be in life where you don't know all the next steps. You're going into the unknown. You are, pushing past your comfort zone, trying something new. Maybe it's not even something new, but it's just you don't know all of the steps. And more importantly, to stress, you don't know the outcome. And trusting the process is not always easy to do. It can be exciting, okay? It can definitely be exciting, but it could be scary or terrifying, especially if it's going into the complete unknown, or once again, not knowing the outcomes. However, when we're saying, walking by faith or trusting the process, it is knowing that there is a higher power outside of yourself guiding you. It's knowing that there is a higher power there that is supporting you along the way. And sometimes you can know there's a higher power. You can know God, source divine is guiding you, and you could still be unsure about the next steps. You could still question what you're doing, why you're doing it, where you're going to go, how it's all going to work out. And as humans, the mind wants to be satisfied. These questions are very valid. And once again, you want to be safe. You want to make choices where you're safe, where no harm comes to you or others. But at the same time, so often when you're put in these situations of stepping out into the unknown or trying something different or going out on a limb, like, do you see the wording that's happening with all of this? It's like taking risks in different ways. The faith is so important. And faith is different than belief. The faith is this unwavering trust and knowing that there is that higher power, that God, source, divine is there for you. And could we even say, when you are being guided or directed to do things, our bodies are such a valuable tool to work with. We could even say that our bodies are an instrument of the divine. Our bodies allow us, and even through the heart, our bodies allow us to be open to receive divine intelligence, divine wisdom, divine guidance, that GPS from God, source divine. Do you see where we're going here? So our bodies are this instrument that can tune into those divine channels, if we want to say it that way. More specifically, connecting to that ultimate source, that ultimate power, God. We'll say God, source divine, but we could just, dilute it or narrow it in, dial it in to God. So being tapped into that, tuned into that, and our bodies are these instruments to receive that insight, guidance, direction, wisdom. And we could say intuition, when you've got that feeling, you have that knowing, and it might be unexplainable. It might not make sense logically, but within your being, you know if something feels right or not for you. You know if something feels off. Like, I can't stress this enough. When I'm saying our bodies are these instruments that can be finely tuned into the frequency of God, you can't go wrong. I have to repeat that though. Being finely tuned into God, you can't go wrong. Because there's a lot of different channels, so to speak, that you can open up communication with. So to be aware of that. But when you're really dialing that in, it's like being on I'm seeing like an old radio with the knobs, or it's just like that you might have some static in the channels, but you just turn it a little bit, you just touch it a little bit. I know we're in the digital age. Some of you might not even know what I'm talking about, and that's okay. but you're just fine tuning it. And then the static starts to go away. And then the channel becomes clear, right? So finally tuning into that higher power, God, source, divine. And once again, you could be guided or directed into situations that you never would have imagined. You might be guided or directed to uproot your life in different ways, to change the way that you look at the world, to change the way that you think or feel about yourself. Everything could change in your life, in your world. But at the same time, as those changes are unfolding, or as you are being that divine instrument, the receiver of the God channel, we'll just even call it that, of the God channel, you know, it's like walking in faith. You know, and you trust that where you're being guided is not to harm you. And sometimes it can be uncomfortable. Sometimes there can be situations where, you know, it's not always pleasant. There can be situations that you're guided into that are painful. It's not ever meant to harm you. However, you know, maybe in those certain situations, if it is painful, through that pain, you're being brought closer to God. You know, it just feels like so much of our journey here as humans is to return home, right? We're returning back to the love of God, source divine. You know, we're returning into that space. We're bringing each other back home. We're all, the end goal is to go back home. No souls left behind. We're all going home. Uh, so yes, you might be put in painful situations. It's not meant to cause harm, you know, but it could be viewed as painful. But through that, you know, when you have that faith, when you have that trust, when you know that it, at the end of the day, the roads that you're walking, even though they might be bumpy, they might be painful, they might, you know, have holes where you could potentially fall into the abyss as you're doing your little journey. You're having that faith, and you're trusting that everything that's happening in this road that you're being guided down ultimately is going to bring you closer to God, source divine, ultimately bringing you closer into that remembrance of who you are as a soul, to be more of a reflection of that. Remember, we're the instruments of the divine, so to be more of a reflection of that. And then through that as well, how can you be an emanation of that in the world too? But part of going into the unknown, we're walking by faith. We're not walking by sight. We're not walking by intellect. Some things you can't, like, don't even make sense. Some things will not logically even make sense. But remember, when you're tuned into that channel, it's undeniable. And you might try to deny it. Like, could we just, I know we can't see you, but raise your hand. I'm gonna like raise both of my hands, my legs, everything. Raise your hand if you have, you know, had an intuitive hit. You know, you've just had that knowing. You've been tuned into the God channel, that frequency, like so dialed in that you have this undeniable knowing. Let's say you're being guided to go a specific direction, and in every part of your being, you know it. You feel it. That's why I'm saying our bodies are phenomenal. Like, they just speak to us in ways that can make things undeniable. Okay, so you know it, you feel it, but at the same time, there can still be that fear. There can still be that doubt. There can still be the questioning of, is this really right? Even though your body is speaking to you, every part of your being is saying, this is the direction we're going. This is the direction you're going, where it's undeniable. But once again, like humans, right? This is where that faith comes in. This is where the trusting the process comes in. Because, you know, it's like Nothing is lost. There aren't going to be mistakes. Okay, we'll just say that as well. However, are you going to go the short way or the long way? Are you going to take, like, not to say that it's going to be the path of least resistance, but are you going to go in that, you know, t- divine timing in that moment? Or are you going to let the fears get in the way? Are you going to let the doubts get in the way? Are you going to just say, I'm all alone? Where are you? You might. I've been there. I've been there. But at the same time, like, all of these things can happen. But I have to say it again. Are you going to go the short way, or are you going to go the long way? Are you going to go the short way, quote unquote short way, or are you going to go like where life is not a straight line, where it's where it's like a roller coaster? But, like, are you going to add extra? I don't want to say detours. I don't want to say detours, because there aren't technically, mistakes that can happen. But I don't also want to say attractions. Like, are you going to add extra attractions to your journey? So, yeah, are you going to go the short way, or are you going to add detours to your journey? Because if you're being guided in a specific direction and you feel it in every part of your being, and it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. Oh gosh, humans so often want to control things and think that we are controlling things, but really, there are there are plans greater than ours. You can have a plan, you can have a dream, you can have a vision, but there is the divine plan, God's plan, these universal plans for your life. In those moments where you're being guided in different directions, right? Well, and let's even put it this way. So we gave the example of being guided in a direction where you're like, yes, I have to go here. Oh, my hands are tied. You have to go there. And you might go, or you might resist. What about for those situations? Remember the wisdom of our body, that instrument tuned into the God frequency, the God channel. So you have an insight that is a clear indicator of a no, right? So we've talked about the yes, a clear indicator of a no. This path that you're going, this direction that you might be choosing, could we just say, pointing, looking at you, the direction that you might be choosing, it could be a hard no. It like, and once again, every part of your being is like, that is a no. Because this is a thing too. Humans get attached to things. Yeah. Humans like to generally be attached to things. The letting go isn't always easy. Not for everyone, but there is that attachment. That's why there's a lot of worry and fear and doubt of the unknown, because it's attachment to outcomes, needing to know. However, for this example, you could be attached to something, like, and it might be subconscious too. Let's say you had a dream, a goal, a desire, a relationship, something, and you're really attached to that which it is, but it's a no, and you feel it's a no, and you're being guided it's a no, but because of the attachment, you're not listening. The channel is loud and clear, but you're not listening. And once again, no mistakes, but that could be adding detours, so to speak, for where God, Source Divine, is intending you to be. So to think about that, you're not going against God, like that's. However, when I just have to say this, when you know. So if you are being guided somewhere, or you're choosing, I just have to, when you're choosing to go somewhere and it's a no, you're not necessarily being guided. You're not going to be guided into no's. those inner knows. You'll be guided into situations. You'll have situations present themselves for you to tune into that God frequency, that God channel, and to listen to the wisdom of the body, this instrument of the divine, and to listen, to have faith, to trust, and then move or not move accordingly. And that's the thing. We have free will. You get to choose. So you could be guided in that direction, divinely guided into that direction where every part of your being is a yes, 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 yes. But the fear, the worry, the doubt, the lack of faith, the lack of faith, the lack of trusting the process. And then you might stay frozen. Or you might, go back against the wall. And once again, you can have that situation where it might be you choosing something, you wanting to, do you hear where we're going? You wanting a specific thing, you making things happen, you forcing things. Don't shoot the messenger. And at the same time, that inner knowing, it's a no. And you might keep pursuing that, but you could keep hitting dead ends. Things might not work out. It's just like everything gets blocked, which can happen as well. Everything can get blocked too when you are opening into that pathway that's an absolute yes. Things, things tend to flow more when you're open to spirit, but there can be blocks, there can be interferences that happen. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows, walking in faith, trusting the process. It's not always going to be like that. However, you might find when you are pushing things or forcing things or choosing things, they might not be in God's will. You could have that feeling and knowing and awareness that it's a no, and you keep doing it anyway, and the choice is yours. That's the beauty. The choice is yours. And are you going to choose? And I can't say the path of least resistance, because sometimes following that God-given guidance, the divine guidance, is not easy. And there is resistance. Could be internal, could be external as well. But when you know, and the choice is yours. And then it's even that expression of like the not knowing and stepping into the unknown. Sometimes it can get hyped up as being so afraid. Like when I worked with clients, it's like, there's excitement and there's fear. And even personally, there can be excitement and fear because you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't have the map or the blueprint. But truthfully, we can limit things as humans, right? Because you're looking at things from your life experience, your beliefs, your perceptions and views on the world. So you're kind of looking at things through the lens of that. And then there can be limitations on that. God source divine is limitless and infinite. So you've got all of these choices, all like everything is before you. But you might only believe that's possible, like just a small little fraction of the infinite, just like a minute piece of the infinite might be what you believe is possible. So that can limit it. I've always said this, even when I was talking to the universe, instead of going straight to God, the creator of the universe. But I would always say, bring me my deepest desires or better, and sometimes our deepest desires aren't actually going to be for our greatest and highest good. But I would always, put things out, put them out into the universe at that time. But now it's like a talk to God. But, I'd put things out there but always add or better, or what you deem or better. That was the wording, because I know as humans we can limit things. So yeah, in life, you are going to be put in situations where you don't know the outcomes. You're going to be put in situations where you're going to be tested. Oh, you're going to probably question your faith. Is this real? What am I even doing? Yeah, we've all been there. I know collectively. It's just like there's probably a handful of people who have not been there. But even then, I'm sure our faith in that higher power in God has been questioned many times. No matter how often God pulls through, the divine pulls through, you're reminded I'm supported, where you're reminded you're supported time and time again. It's like the memory banks get clean slated, it's like you forget all of those times you've been supported. But that's what walking by faith is, to just really have that faith and trust and knowing. It's like a three-part combo: faith, trust, and knowing that you supported. Faith, trust, and knowing that God's got you. Faith, trust, and knowing that wherever you are right now is exactly where you're meant to be. Wherever you are right now is exactly where you're meant to be. You could be in the lowest of the lows or the highest of the highs. Wherever you are right now is exactly where you're meant to be. And once again, that can feel challenging to hear, because I know me personally, if I was in a really dark place and I heard someone saying I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, I might have some choice words. Well, a different version of me would have had some choice words. Shaking my fist, but the God's plan, and once again, there can be detours, but where you are right now is exactly where you're meant to be, and where you're being guided when you have that inner knowing. Like, that's not coming through for no reason. It's to really listen to that, to trust that, to have faith that God's got you. Lots of love. Mwah.